Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Let me share something that happened during one of my shifts at the gas station where I work. I've been working the night shift there for about 3 years now. It's usually pretty quiet except for the occasional drunk customer or late-night truckers stopping for coffee. The pay isn't amazing, but my manager is great and my co-workers are decent people. A week ago, around 2 a.m., these two teenage boys came into the store. I'd seen them a few times before. They usually buy energy drinks and chips, typical teenager stuff, but this time they loaded up on drinks and snacks and just bolted right out the door without paying. It was about $30 worth of merchandise. Now we have a strict policy about not chasing shoplifters. It's not worth getting hurt over some stolen snacks. So I did what I'm supposed to do. Wrote up a report for my boss so she could pull the security footage and add their pictures to our wall of shame. You'd be surprised how many thieves actually come back to the scene of their crime. 2 days ago, I was working a rare day shift when those same two boys walked in. But this time they had backup. One of their mothers was waiting in the car. As soon as I saw them, I knew this was going to be interesting. I immediately told them they needed to leave the store. The first boy asked what for, while his friend claimed they hadn't done anything wrong. I reminded them that they knew exactly what they'd done and told them they were banned from the store. I gave them a choice: leave voluntarily or be escorted out by police. They went back to their car where their mom was waiting at the pump. I could see them through the window, gesturing and pointing at the store. Sure enough, their mom came storming in like a tornado in yoga pants. She demanded to know why I'd told her son and his friend they couldn't be in the store. I explained about the theft of nearly $30 in products and told her that while she was welcome to shop here, her son and his friend were banned and would face police involvement if they returned to the property. The mother exploded, insisting her son wasn't a thief and demanding to see a manager. I happily agreed to get one. What she didn't know was that my manager had already heard everything from her office. My manager is amazing. She takes no nonsense from anyone and backs up her employees 100%. She came out immediately. The mother continued her tirade, calling us liars and accusing us of targeting her son and his friend for no reason. My manager offered to show her the security footage. The mother agreed, declaring that once she proved we were lying, she'd make sure I was fired. These genius thieves had worn their school track team hoodies during the theft. Not only that, but they were still wearing the same hoodies while sitting in the car. They had their names printed right on the back. Their only attempt at disguise was pulling the hoods up over their hair. When my manager played the security footage, the mom's face went through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. First denial, then shock, then embarrassment, then anger. She stood there speechless for a moment before finding her voice again. She stormed out of the office, screaming about calling corporate on her way out. My manager just shook her head and told me that if the mom came back causing more trouble, we'd take the security footage straight to the police. The next day I found out that the mom actually did try to call corporate. They reviewed the footage themselves and backed us up completely. But the real karma came when the school track coach saw the footage. Apparently, stealing from local businesses violated the team's code of conduct. Both boys got suspended from the team for the rest of the season. I've been playing baseball since I was 6 years old, and I've always taken it seriously. By the time I was 15, I had become the oldest player and unofficial team manager for our junior high baseball team, the Pirates. Baseball taught me discipline, teamwork, and responsibility, values that some parents, unfortunately, didn't seem to appreciate. This story happened during a home game. Being the home team meant we were batting second. The game started normally enough. The opposing team was up to bat first, and we were getting ready for our turn. That's when everything went sideways. I was standing near the dugout when I heard a shrill voice cutting through the usual game chatter. It was Karen, who called out to get our coach's attention. When he asked what she needed, she made it clear she was there to complain about her son not being in the starting lineup. Our coach tried to explain that her son wasn't starting because he hadn't been paying attention during practices and previous games. Before he could even finish his explanation, Karen interrupted him with an outrageous accusation, suggesting that her son wasn't starting because he was black. The way she emphasized that word made everyone around freeze. Our coach, who had always been fair to every player regardless of their background, looked absolutely stunned. The coach denied her racist accusation, explaining again that her son's attitude and lack of effort were the real issues. He wouldn't follow instructions to improve his game and showed no team spirit during matches. Karen dismissed these valid concerns, demanding that her son be put in as a starter immediately, going so far as to call the other players delinquents who should be pulled off the field. By this point, the home plate umpire had heard enough of her tirade. He ordered her to leave the complex due to her inappropriate behavior and the way she'd spoken to our coach. When she tried to argue that he couldn't make her leave, he threatened to have the police remove her if necessary. We thought that was the end of it when she left, and the game continued. Her son even got to play in the fourth inning as a substitute, but Karen came back, apparently thinking she'd been given a second chance. This time she started screaming at the top of her lungs, claiming she was just cheering for her son while we were at bat. The umpire confronted her again, reminding her that she'd already been told to leave and had used up her chances. That's when I decided to take action. Being the oldest player and unofficial team manager had its perks. Everyone knew my father was the police officer on duty in our small town. I pulled out my phone and made the call. The game was paused until the situation was resolved. My father showed up within minutes, and Karen's face went from entitled rage to shocked disbelief when she realized she was actually going to face consequences for her actions. The sports complex administration didn't waste any time. They banned her from attending any activities at the facility for the rest of the high school season, even though we were just a junior high team. We ended up winning the game 4-2 in 5 innings. I still remember the look on her face when my father showed up. She kept trying to argue that she had every right to be there, but the combination of the umpire's authority, the complex administration, and a police officer's presence finally made her understand that her son's spot in the starting lineup wasn't a right. It was something that had to be earned through hard work and dedication, just like the rest of us had done. So, some backstory first. I work at a large grocery store chain. As someone who stocks groceries, replace items that have been left or returned throughout the day, and various other chores around the store. It's a pretty small store, so most of the employees can do almost all of the tasks. So this night I was putting away a cart of items that customers decided they didn't want, overstock, or were damaged. There was a separate area where damaged items went, obviously. Now I should preface this with the fact that I'm not completely deaf. I can faintly hear things like slamming doors, loud phones, ringtones, and some things like that. Though I cannot hear voices at all, even loud yelling. While I am deaf, I know sign language, have a large pin and lanyard that I wear that informs people that I am in fact deaf. In addition to this, I have a small notebook that has a variety of pre-written responses to questions, sort of like flashcards. Though communication is difficult sometimes, I try my best to make things work, and I am very prepared. Most people are understanding, work with me, and we get through the conversation. Some kind people even sign with me. That always makes me smile. I'm pretty young and don't look like the typical hearing impaired person, so when people sometimes get a little grumpy because I don't respond right away, they're very apologetic. Not this time. This is where the story gets good. So I'm mulling along one evening and decided to get an early start on the overstock from the day, which was filling a shopping cart to the max. Since this was earlier than I normally began, there were more people still in the store as opposed to when I usually started. No big deal. I started anyway. About half a shopping cart later, I'm in the paper towels section when I feel someone roughly poke me in the shoulder. I jump and turn around startled to see this lady. She's taller than me and I'm no slouch. I'm 6 feet tall or 72 inches. She is very thin, probably mid-50s, frizzy blonde hair only held back by a bright red hat atop her head. This back in September of 2020, and of course she doesn't have a mask on. According to the nice customer who witnessed the scene, the crazy Karen had been trying to get my attention and became increasingly frustrated when I didn't respond. She complained about my apparent ignorance of her attempts to communicate. I began pointing to my lanyard and ears, trying to show that I couldn't hear her. She continued expressing her anger, accusing me of deliberately ignoring her. She then took a step forward and grabbed my lanyard, yanking it violently until it unsnapped from around my neck, throwing it to the ground. At this point, I'm very nervous and beginning to panic. I tried to verbally express that I couldn't hear, but I'm not sure how it came out, as I've never actually heard my own voice. My partner says it sounds very cute, however. The nice customer entered the scene then, and I quickly wrote in my notebook explaining that I was deaf and confused about the situation. The nice customer confronted the crazy Karen about her behavior, pointing out my obvious disability indicators. The crazy Karen refused to accept this explanation, insisting that I was just being lazy and uncooperative. Their argument escalated, drawing a crowd of onlookers. I began to cry from the stress of the situation. This finally caught the attention of both my store manager and regional manager. The store manager approached me and used sign language to check on my well-being, while the regional manager went to handle the situation with the nice customer and crazy Karen. The store manager instructed me to gather my things and wait in the employee break room. About 15 minutes later, the store manager and regional manager entered with a police officer, informing me that the crazy Karen had been arrested. The store manager explained in sign language that the crazy Karen was charged with third-degree assault, and the officer needed my written statement and asked about pressing charges. I agreed to press charges and provided my statement. The nice customer had stayed to help, and I wrote him a thank you note. The managers also rewarded his intervention with a gift card for being an upstanding citizen. That was by far the worst experience I've ever had with a customer, but I'm thankful that awesome people like the nice customer, store manager, and regional manager exist. Also, the crazy Karen got sentenced to a few months in jail, probation, and was fined a hefty amount. My girlfriend and I had been planning this Orlando trip for months. We wanted to take my 5-year-old son to experience the magic of Disney World for the first time. He'd been begging to go ever since he saw those commercials with kids his age having the time of their lives. As a single dad most of the time, I share custody with his mom. I wanted to make this trip extra special. We spent 3 amazing days at the parks and my son was absolutely over the moon. But by the end of our vacation, we were all exhausted. We decided to take the train back to Miami instead of driving because we thought it would be more relaxing. Oh, how wrong we were. We boarded the train early and found our seats, 4 of them facing each other. I sat on one side while my girlfriend sat opposite me with my son next to her. The 4th seat was empty. My son was clutching his new Mickey Mouse plush toy, still chattering excitedly about all the rides we'd been on. That's when she appeared. This woman with her daughter who looked about 7 or 8 years old. The moment I saw her face, I could tell she was going to be trouble. She had that look, you know, that the world owes me everything expression. The woman immediately started demanding that we make my son sit on my lap because she and her daughter were tired of standing. My girlfriend, surprised by her demanding tone, looked up from her phone and politely told her that we had reserved the seat earlier. The woman wouldn't back down and insisted that since my son was younger, he should sit on my lap. I suggested that since there was one free spot, she could sit there and put her own daughter on her lap instead. She questioned why her daughter should be uncomfortable. The woman's voice was getting louder with each exchange. My son started hugging his Mickey Mouse tighter, clearly getting uncomfortable with the situation. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that there was a perfectly good seat available, and she could either take it or leave it. She became more agitated, arguing that her daughter needed proper space to sit and complained about how long they'd been standing. When I reminded her that we had paid for our seats and it wasn't our problem, she became even more unreasonable, insisting that my tiny son didn't need his own seat. Things escalated when she actually tried to reach for my son's arm to move him herself. My girlfriend immediately pulled him closer and warned her not to touch our child. The woman then threatened to get security and I called her bluff, reminding her that we were there first. By this point, other passengers were staring at us. The woman was creating such a scene that the ticket inspector came rushing into our wagon. When he asked what was happening, things went from bad to absolutely insane. The woman's face suddenly transformed into this mask of pure terror, and she made up an outrageous lie about me pulling out a knife and threatening her and her daughter. I was so shocked I actually laughed out loud, which probably wasn't the best reaction, but come on, where did that even come from? I explained the true situation to the inspector, describing how we were peacefully sitting when she demanded space and tried to grab my son. My girlfriend backed me up, emphasizing that the woman had touched our little boy. Two other passengers who had witnessed the whole thing joined in to support us. One confirmed that the woman was causing a disturbance, and another called her a Karen. That last comment sent her into a complete meltdown. She started screaming that she wasn't a Karen and calling everyone disrespectful brats. Her face was turning redder by the second as she screamed incoherently. Her poor daughter looked mortified, trying to make herself as small as possible in the corner. The ticket inspector tried to calm her down and warned her that he would have to report this to the authorities if she didn't settle down. She responded with more threats, demanding to know if he knew who she was and threatening his job for taking our side. The inspector made the call while the woman continued screaming about her rights and how we were all conspiring against her. My son, who had been scared at first, was now watching the whole thing like it was another Disney show. When we reached the next station, 2 police officers had to physically remove her from the trainee. She was kicking and screaming the whole way, her purse flailing around as she tried to break free. A third officer had to escort her confused and embarrassed daughter off the train. As the train started pulling away from the station, I couldn't help myself. I caught her eye through the window and gave her my biggest, most satisfied smirk. The last thing I saw was her face turning an impossible shade of purple as she screamed something we couldn't hear through the glass. The perfect ending came when my son tugged at my sleeve and observed that she was scarier than the dragon at Disney World. The rest of our journey was peacefully uneventful, though we did spend it exchanging stories with the other passengers about the most entitled people they'd ever met. Turns out our Karen wasn't even the worst one, but that's a story for another day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.